Good evening and welcome to Allegiant Church for our Wednesday night Bible study. Good to have everybody with us here in the house and those that are connecting with us online, either live or recorded. We're glad to have you with us tonight. We're going to be continuing our discussion on discernment and deception and those kinds of things. But before we jump in too far, Linda, would you lead us in prayer, please?
Yes, sir. Lord, we thank you for another day, oh God, and we just take this time to just honor you and love on you and just thank you for being so good to us this week. And you've been right by our side everywhere we've been and traveling and at our different destinations. Lord, we're just thankful that you have covered us with your safety and your healing power, God. And we just thank you for another time, God, that we can come into your house and worship you and just learn more about your word, oh God. We'll be ready to go out, Father, and speak to other people and just to let our light shine, God. And we just thank you again for those that are here and those online. We just pray blessings upon them. And we pray for the ones that are hurting, that's recovering from surgery today. And we just pray complete healing and recovery soon and quickly. Father, we thank you for those, Lord, that you have already touched over this past week of our prayer request. And we're just thankful, God. We're just so happy that you're always there when we need some kind of help. No matter what the need may be, you always told us you would meet every need that we have. And we love you for that tonight. Lord, we just pray that you would just open our eyes and our minds and our hearts and our spirits to your word tonight, God. And we just give you all the glory for it.
Amen. All right, so we have been working on Sundays on deception, and on Wednesday night we started week before last on discernment. We did not have class last week. We took a week off for Labor Day. Yeah, sorry, Labor Day, and nobody wore white tonight, did they? We're good. Okay, all right. No white after Labor Day, right? Isn't that the rule? We live in North Carolina. You can have white just about any time. But good to have all of you back with us tonight. And we're going to continue that study. There's the plan. But I do want to look at a few things, and culturally, that's a lot of what we're focusing on right now, and see where people are and see what people are thinking right now, especially in light of everything that's going on. So there is much in the news, much happening. We had the very first, I guess it was sort of the second presidential debate, except different candidate this time. Seems kind of odd. That's never happened in my lifetime before. But so the first debate was with Joe Biden, and this debate was with Kamala Harris. Maybe by the third one we'll have somebody else. I don't know. That's a joke. Okay, my sarcasm's slipping, isn't it? Sorry about that. So, who watched the debate last night? Two of you? Terry's like, I had to. My husband was doing it.
I did, but I watched it probably 4 minutes and cut it off.
That's all you could handle, huh?
I don't like the talk back and forth, disrespectful, and just already started out that way. I just said, nope. So,
yeah, it got worse.
Mike, was your hand up over there?
Which, you can surely hear it on that. I just knew what it was going to be. So.
Got worse, is that what I heard?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And of course, has anybody caught any of the reactions today going on out there? What's been your, what have you heard today?
A lot of frustration.
Frustration over?
Yeah. Just the performance of Trump.
Trump's
the
performance?
lies coming out of Kamala.
Frustration. Trump didn't do as well as they hoped, and lies from Kamala. Of course, CNN, I think, immediately started talking about Donald Trump's lies. So, interesting take on, depending on which side of the fence you were on, I guess. There's a couple interesting articles out there that kind of contrast that. So, anybody have any thoughts or comments, or questions even, that you had? I'm not saying we can answer them, but we can at least pose them.
I I did have a family member that told me they did watch it,
Uh-huh.
and that they wish that, like I said, I didn't watch it, so I'm saying what they told me, that they wish that they would have both, especially Trump, would have given his plan and told him what he was gonna do, and he may have done some, but I don't think it was just, instead of arguing and bickering, tell what your plan is gonna be for our country. So it seems like that gets missed on a debate because they want to bicker and argue and they're off.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I didn't listen to it, but that's just what this person told me.
There was a lot of not misdirection, but well, some of it was probably misdirection too. Redirection when certain questions were asked, very specific questions about policy that pretty much just got pushed off to the side for other things that were being discussed, or other things that were brought up. I think a couple of interesting things about policy did come about. One is the fact that just before the debate, I don't know if you saw the news, but they basically discovered that Kamala had finally put her policy on her website, which she did not have on her campaign website before. But it was basically a copy and paste from Biden's website. So it wasn't really her plan. It was basically, and I understood that in some spots his name was still accidentally left in it when they first moved it over. So there was that. Now I heard complaints on the other side from some of the people that I listened to, and they were basically talking about how that Kamala didn't present any policy. Trump's a little bit different because Trump is basically saying that he's going to follow through with his policies from last time. So we've already got 4 years of what he's done and what he's going to do. So we pretty much have an idea. With Kamala, she basically is running from a lot of the things that Biden has done, sort of. So she has talked a little bit about her $50,000 tax deduction for businesses, but no other discussion that I've heard on that, on how that works or how that happens. And she's talked about a $25,000 basically down payment for people who are buying their first home. Trump has talked about continuing the tax cuts, which is something that Biden had planned to get rid of. And then he's talked about, I actually talked about several things. The only new thing that I heard last night was, I'm trying to remember, was that last night or was that in another speech? But it was the idea of basically governmental responsibility. So he's teasing the idea of actually putting Elon Musk in charge of a government accountability commission that will lower our deficit, lower our debt, and try to get America back into more fiscal responsibility, that's a big deal right there. He did talk on the abortion thing. He talked about why he believed that the states should handle that. That was pretty bitter between the two of them as they went after that. Kamala Harris did say that she would pass a national law that would protect abortion, and she wouldn't come out and actually answer the question, but I felt like it was pretty clear that she was fine with all the way up to 9 months. So, and that's consistent with her running mate, and it's consistent with other things she said in the past. So she says she hasn't changed her values. She said that again. She said it before, but she said it again. I don't know how you change your position without changing your values, but that's something that she never answered last night, was how that happened. On Trump's side, she got under his skin. There's no doubt about it. She made him angry. And he came across a little frustrated. He handled himself far, far better than he did in the Hillary Clinton debate, if anybody remembers that one. Because that one, he kind of beat up on her, and that's something that people warned him about. You can't talk that way to a woman because people are going to defend the woman. And so you can talk about equal rights all day long, but if a man talks to a woman the way Kamala talked to him last night, it would have been a very different discussion today. They would have taken Trump to the cleaners because she was absolutely disrespectful and hateful. Told him that nobody in the world liked him, that all the generals hated him, that all the world leaders hated him. And she just kept pounding on it over and over and over again. So, but she did get under his skin, which he should have expected. She was going to try to do that. I think he was surprised, honestly, that she did as well as she did. And I think a lot of people were. It's probably the best debate she's ever done. Because she's not a good debater, and she's usually not a good spontaneous speaker. She usually has word salads where she, time is important because it's time, and time, everybody knows about time. And you kind of end up and you're like, what? But she did not do that last night, which led a lot of people to determined that she was very well rehearsed and that these were lines and overly rehearsed in many ways, because even her facial expressions, her hand gestures. She had this one last night. I'm still trying to figure out. It was kind of like this as she's listening to me, and I'm like, what in the world is that? What is that? And this kind of puzzled look on her face. One commentator, I don't know if he was guessing, so I don't know, but it made sense to me. It made more sense than anything else I know. He said probably she was rehearsing on a table, where she could rest her arm, yeah. And the table was too short last night, so she just kind of held it up in the air. I don't know, but yeah, there was some odd things with that, and then of course there's been a lot of discussion about the moderators and how the questions that were asked. They corrected Trump at least 5 times, fact-checking, not all of which was accurate, by the way, and never fact-checked her, not once. And if you look at the way the questions, and this is a part of what we're talking about with the deception and things like that, if you look at the way the questions were posed to each of them, if you look at the way the follow-ups were carried after each of them, you will definitely see a pattern of preference coming. They did it in a way to where if you're not aware of those things, you might think they were very professional because they present themselves as very professional. But there were definitely manipulative tools that they used, which led Trump to come out and tell everybody it was 3 against 1. And honestly, it probably was. But I don't know about y'all, but I expected that considering it was ABC News. I don't understand this. It happens every year. I don't understand why they don't do debates in a way where both candidates choose a person to moderate for them. So Trump would choose a moderator that he wants. Kamala Harris would choose a moderator she wants. And then the room is open to whatever news media wants to come and shoot it. Instead of having these news agencies who are obviously biased. And the same thing would be true in many ways if it was Fox News. And some moderators would do a better job of being unbiased than others. But the truth of the matter is they all have a bias. They're going to vote one way or the other. And so why not just take that into account when you create the environment and say, look, I want this guy to moderate for me, and I want, you can have who you want to moderate for you. And they can still cross-talk, and they can ask the other questions. I think that's fair. But to set it up on for example, the first debate, one of the moderators had referred to Donald Trump as Hitler prior to the debate. So it's like, you really can't expect an honest, open debate from somebody who's calling somebody a name like that. So those were some of the thoughts that I had. I did not think that Trump did a stellar job. He said that it was his best debate ever. I disagree. I don't think it was. And I do think Kamala did far better than what a lot of people predicted she would, and probably her best debate I've ever seen. Probably her best engagement I've ever seen. But again, it did come across very staged, very rehearsed. And the first 5 or 10 minutes, she looked like she was nervous as a cat on a hot roof. She was just shaking, and her voice was quivering. So I don't know what she was expecting. Maybe she thought Donald Trump was going to come across there and hurt her or something. I don't know, but yeah, it was an interesting debate went on for over 100 minutes. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Any other thoughts or questions?
I did hear on the ABC, because that's where it was on, so I started looking at maybe about 10 till, quarter till, and they were, of course, talking all about it. But I did hear one reporter say that lots of voters were waiting to actually make their decision on who they were going to vote for based on last night's debate. So
Right.
I wonder how that turned out.
And from the analysis that I've heard, it didn't move the needle.
Oh, really?
And the reason was because they still don't know what Kamala really stands for.
Yeah.
You think about it, she's only been in the race for, what, 2 months? Has it been even that long yet? And she has only done one interview in that whole time, which was with CNN, which was 18 minutes long, the actual interview part. Now, they did other stuff where they talked about who she was as far as how she rose to this level and blah, 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 which came across, honestly, as more of a campaign promo than it did a legitimate interview. And then the questions were mostly softball. She had Tim Walz with her when she did it. So even that interview was very, very weak. They didn't challenge her on stuff like why she was flip-flopping, why she spent years talking bad about the border wall and how it was a big waste of money and how it was, Trump was just trying to get attention and blah, blah, blah. And now all of a sudden she says she's for the border wall. And she's showing the border wall in her ads, in her political ads. They're not talking, she hasn't really answered the question, well, why were you against fracking? And now you're saying you won't ban fracking. What is that? And she said last night, she said that she made it clear during the last campaign that she would not ban fracking, that she was against ban. That's not exactly true. What she said in the last campaign was that Biden would not ban fracking. She did not say she wouldn't, and she didn't have the power to, but she said Biden would not ban fracking. So that's a very different thing. And she did vote for, she sponsored actually the Green New Deal, which would have banned fracking. And she's claiming this as a positive thing, but to me it's not. And that is she was the deciding vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which had a lot of green environmentalism, a lot of money for that in it. So, but as far as people changing, so far, now, sometimes it takes a few days for the polls to kind of catch up, but from what I'm seeing so far and what I'm hearing, it didn't change a thing. And if anything, a lot of independents were frustrated that they still don't have answers to their questions.
Yep, exactly.
So, and she really does need, the biggest thing she needs to do, for an honest campaign. Now, why do I say that? Because deceit can win a campaign. And by not having interviews and by not stating who you are, you can make people think that what you look like and what gender you are and whatever is a positive thing. We already know that Trump is already polarized. People either love him or they hate him. So if Kamala can be the neighbor next door that everybody likes, then that could win her the election. But if she starts letting people know what she believes about abortion, what she believes, when I say abortion, most people know she's for abortion, but a lot of people don't realize how radical Tim Walz is, for example, and Kamala picked him. He let 8 babies born alive die, okay, under his watch. He passed a law to where they could take children away from their parents and give them transgender surgery, transgender medications, and then give them back to their children after they had transitioned them to a different sex, and then charge the parents for the medication and the medical treatments that they had. That's who Tim Walz is. And that's not maybe he would do this. This is he did this. Okay, this is as governor of Minnesota. And she thought that he was the best pick for vice president. So that speaks a lot about who she is. So lots there on the Trump side. I think Trump has hurt his image with the pro-life community. I think most people in the pro-life community are upset that he hasn't taken a stronger stand against abortion. I think the reason that he has gone with the states thing that he's talking so much about, and he did last night, is primarily because he knows that in Ohio and some of the swing states and things like that, that the reversal of Roe versus Wade has been a very negative thing as far as politics is concerned. We love it from a pro-life perspective, but the truth is those states already have abortion, but they want it to be everywhere. They want it to be all over. And then his IVF statement, two things that he did on that. One is by saying he wanted to pay for IVF treatments. He was actually going against conservatism because conservatives don't believe the government should pay for other people's stuff. And then on the second front, it's a pro-life issue. Now, most pro-life people are not totally against IVF, but there's problems they want resolved. And the biggest problem that they want resolved is the fact that IVF usually results in the creation of multiple babies that oftentimes are then destroyed after the conception, because it's cheaper to have 5 babies eggs than it is, or 5 embryos, than it is to have one, because one it could not survive or whatever. So you make 5 so that you've got a backup. But then what do you do with the ones you don't use? Now there are adoption options. They call them snowflake babies, where you can actually adopt somebody else's embryo and have it implanted and basically be a surrogate, but it would be your child when it's born. There are things that can be done in that, but there's a lot of ethical and spiritual questions about IVF that I just wish he hadn't weighed in on at this point. I think the reason he did was because he was taking so many hits about reproductive rights, and we need to get wiser as Christians and not allow them to frame the debate. And that's largely what's happening. When did abortion become reproductive rights? No, an abortion means you're not going to reproduce. Actually, you're going to stop reproduction in process. So it is a nice sounding term that sounds far better than fetal murder, right? Now, I think we have to be careful. We don't want to become as harsh in our rhetoric as they are, but at the same time, we need to be clear on what they're advocating. They are advocating for the mutilization of children before birth and after birth. And they are promoting the ideas of the taking away of parents' rights, the taking away of a parent's responsibility to even be able to care for their child as the state takes over that role because they don't agree with the parent's moral decision on whether or not a 13-year-old should be allowed, a 13-year-old boy should be allowed to become a 13-year-old girl. How many of you know that doesn't really happen anyway? Just because you change body parts doesn't change a thing. You're still who you are. So we've got to get better at talking without what Linda was talking about. We don't need to attack them, but we need to make it clear what the results of these things are. Since Roe versus Wade, America, the United States of America, has killed 50 million children. They weren't body parts that were taken out. They were children. People say, well, a fetus isn't a human. What is it then?
Yeah, exactly.
Is an infant a human? Is a toddler a human? Is a teenager a human? Because all of those are stages of development along the humanity course of growth. A fetus is a preborn human. An infant is a human that just got born. A toddler is a human that's probably walking now. Right? It's just a stage of development.
Yep, that's true.
And so, and actually the word fetus comes from that idea. So these things they're teaching on college campuses, yeah, it's not tissue. Tissue doesn't become something that grows up and thinks and eats and does all that, right?
Right.
When your appendix is taken out, you didn't just stop somebody from maturing. Okay, so maybe I'm a little passionate about that, but we have played the game of talking their language and being soft on it and not recognizing the horror. And don't think for a minute that these weren't the same kind of discussions that were going on pre-Civil War about black people. As a matter of fact, they were ruled as 3/5, right? Now, we could get into that. It's a little deeper than that. Actually has to do with the voting compromise, and it was actually put forth by the slave community. But anyway, not the slave community, but slave states. But the whole idea that they weren't truly human, or they weren't human enough, or they weren't advanced enough, those were the ideas of slavery. Those were the same ideas that were promoted with the Jews. They were the same ideas promoted with other genocidal cultures. The idea is they're not what we think they ought to be, or they're not useful to us, or they're not smart enough, or they're not old enough, or they can't take care of themselves, or whatever, and that's the path you go down on every single time. We have the same issue when it comes to care of people after they get older, or is it palliative care? Is that what they call it?
Palliative, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like hospice care. Yeah.
And we got the same issues with that, and we got the same issues with disabled people. Because if a child who can't take care of themselves is worthy of being killed, then why is an elderly person who can't take care of themselves not worthy to be killed? And don't you doubt for a minute that there are people that are already advocating for that. Some of them are college professors. Okay, like Mr. Sanger up at, was he Princeton, I think? But nevertheless, and this, people don't even understand, this comes out, it's the same stuff that we saw in the eugenics movement. And eugenics goes all the way back to at least the 1800s, really many times before. We can really take it back to even the Roman Empire and before, because what would they do? They would take their little girls that were just born out into the woods and leave them for nature to take over, if you know what I mean. Because they didn't want little girls, they want little boys. Or in China, where they favored boys over girls, so they would have abortions, or they would do other things to make sure that they didn't have little girls. Now, their country's in trouble because they've got a whole lot of little boys, or excuse me, a whole lot of older boys now who can't find any women because they killed them all. And that's a reality. And if you don't think that doesn't play into China's desire to take over more and more territory, you get another thing coming. Because just take a bunch of 18-year-old testosterone-filled males who have no women and find out how rough your society gets. Anybody ever heard of the Wild West? There was a reason it was wild. There was a reason they had the pardon the term, the whorehouses. Because they needed something to calm these men down a little bit. I'm not saying it was moral. I'm not saying it was right. I'm just telling you that's the way it was. So we've been here in history before in different ways. And now that had to do with the women not wanting to move out there where it was so rough. But they've actually been taking social engineering to a new level with abortion and with genocide and things like that. So, and maybe, just maybe, some of these 18 to 24-year-olds who are currently shouting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, in other words, advocating genocide of Israel, maybe they would have a little bit better recognition of life if they hadn't been told all their life that babies aren't important.
Exactly.
Thoughts, comment, other thoughts, comments, questions?
This may not probably be on the same subject of this, but I think it's close. You were mentioning the thing about China, but I'm not sure if is it Japan that, of course, they got security cameras everywhere. They know what their people are doing. I think
So
it's
does
Japan.
China, yeah.
Where now?
So does China.
Okay, yeah, so, okay. But I think it's Japan, I think that I saw on news something probably a year ago, said that the government has regulated where the parents can just have one child. Have you heard of that?
That's China.
That's China.
Yeah,
okay.
that's China.
Oh, not Japan.
Because of their overpopulation issues. Now, Japan is having other issues, and my girls might actually know a little bit more about that because they've studied more about Japanese. I know they've got the biggest problem in Japan, I think, right now is the fact that they're not getting married. So they're waiting until they're much older, and maybe they can't have babies at that point.
Oh, okay.
Plus the fact that Japan's, especially the cities, are very overpopulated. They'll have 3 families living in a house. And so what they'll do is they'll actually, in some cases, they'll take shifts so that one family gets it for 8 hours, the next family gets it for the next 8 hours, the next family gets it for the next 8 hours.
Wow.
And that's the way they rent out some of their property over there because they just don't have the room for everybody to have their own place. But anything on the children issue with Japan that you guys are aware of? No? So I'm not sure exactly. I know Japan had the one-child policy.
Okay.
I don't know what their current policy is. I haven't. But that's what I was pointing to when I was talking about all these males they've got now. The reason for that was because when the woman got pregnant, they wanted to have a son. And so if they got pregnant and they found out it was a girl, they would abort it so that they could try again to get a boy.
Oh.
Yeah. Some of them should have thought ahead and said, you know what, if we have a girl, it could be very valuable. And girls are very valuable in Japan, in China now, because they have not valued them for so long that now there's a much greater need for women in China. And that's part of the reason they're, who was it I was talking to? It might have been Bishop McKenzie. Yeah, I think it was Bishop McKenzie. He said that, of course, China's really, really trying to buy up Africa and put businesses in Africa and other things. But the other thing they're doing is they're sending their males over to get wives. So if the rate continues what's happening now, then by the next generation or two, Africa will be a Chinese continent, not an African continent. Unless something breaks that pattern. We don't think about all this stuff, do we? And none of that came up in the debate. There's always implications on culture when people have different moral values. It always impacts everybody, eventually.
Yeah, it's true.
What else y'all got? Nobody? All right. We're missing a couple who probably have something to say. Let me flip over here. I want to show you something I thought was kind of interesting. In light of our political season, and it's not just our political season anymore. We are literally getting lied to every time we turn around. Actually, we don't even have to turn around. They lied to us while we're still standing there. We saw a tremendous amount of this during COVID. We're still seeing issues right now with social media and their desire to stop fake news, when in reality a lot of times they're actually stopping the real news and supporting the fake news, right? So what does it take to sell a lie? Now, keep in mind, I'm not here trying to teach you how to sell a lie. I'm trying to teach you how to know when somebody's trying to sell you a lie. So I'm going to give you this, but I ask that you not use it for evil purposes. Okay? So what does it take to sell a lie? What's a successful lie? Well, the first thing is plausibility. It has to be believable. So if you don't mind, I'm going to use the political context here a little bit and try not to be too partisan here, but it has to have some believability. So how is Kamala Harris able to paint Donald Trump in such evil terms and say things that are just, well, let me just say it like it is. I know CNN said she only told one misleading fact last night. It was far more than that. Federalists put together 25 things that they believe she was wrong about. They're not just wrong about. There were two specific ones that I'll mention that were absolutely bold-faced or bald-faced, whichever way you say that, lies. Absolutely 100%. And she should have known better. Certainly her handlers are, but they keep saying it anyway, and it's this. One was she said that Donald Trump said that the white supremacists and the Nazis at Charlottesville, there were good people on both sides. Okay? Even Snopes, which tends to be pretty liberal in their interpretation of truth, has said that that is not true. And if you go back and you watch the speech that he gave, what he said was, and he's very clear on that, he said, there are people, and I'm not talking about the Nazis or the white supremacists. He said that. He actually said that. And he said that some want to get rid of the statue and change the name of the park. Others believe that it's important to keep the name and the statue. And he said there are good people on both sides. He was talking about whether or not the people that were for or against the statue and the renaming of the park. He said there are good people on both sides of that question. He was not talking about the people who were causing the riots and all of that. And he says that like 1 second before the soundbite that they play, and they say that that's the truth. So, and you can go look that up for yourself. It's like I say, everybody has debunked that. Now, if I could criticize Donald Trump, I will say that he should not have picked Sean Hannity and I can't remember who else he said. Anyway, it was another Fox News person. He said they've debunked that. He should have said Snopes debunked that, because the liberals respect Snopes. They don't respect Sean Hannity. So he should have used other people. He's not always, that clever on those types of things. As far as speaking is concerned, he speaks like a New Yorker, who's grown up in that, and that's what he does. So I'm not trying to criticize him as a person. I'm just saying politically, sometimes that plays. It could play better if he were Reagan. Okay. I was talking to Judah today about Reagan. I said I tend to judge everybody's debate performance against Reagan because he was the best. He was absolutely phenomenal. I'll tell two stories. You probably know at least one of them, but you may not know the second one at least. The first one was where he was in the debate, and most people have seen this. You can look it up on YouTube. But it was his debate against Walter Mondale. And Walter Mondale had been the vice president under Jimmy Carter. And so after he defeated Carter in 80, Walter Mondale ran against him in 84. And so there was a lot of talk about how old Reagan was, which is funny now compared to how old some of our people are. But back then, he was considered old. And there were some questions about that. And so the moderator asked him, said, a lot has been made about the age, your age in this, no, they didn't say your age. It's just that there's been a lot made about age in this campaign. What do you have to say about that? And Reagan responded and said, look, he said, I am not going to use my opponent's youth and inexperience against him.
Oh, God.
And Walter Mondale just cracked up. He thought that was... So the guy who was actually running against him laughed. And Reagan was a master at being able to turn things like that and be and just very likable. He didn't have to attack him. He didn't have to yell. He didn't have to whatever. He just... And then another time, which was one of my favorite ones, is when they were talking to him about the economy. And, of course, he had blamed Democrats for different things they had done. And so the moderator asked Reagan, said, do you take any responsibility for our current economic problems. And the other thing I liked about Reagan was he never just kind of jumped into a question. He always well, yes, I do. I do take responsibility because for several years I was a Democrat. And so he was just a master at being able to get that across. But nevertheless, we don't have many people that can do that anymore, unfortunately. And we don't have too many people that want to anymore, because it seems like in our culture today, everybody wants to yell at everybody. Exactly. And that's really unfortunate. Reagan, some of you may know this, some of you may not, but go back. I have not seen the movie yet. I'm looking forward to it. I hear it's great. One of the biggest things about it was only 26%, something like that, of the critics liked the movie on Rotten Tomatoes. But 98% of the regular people who went to see it loved it. So that should tell you a lot. Because usually if the critics like it, I don't even want to see it. So 98% said they loved the movie. I'm looking forward to it. I've read biographies on Reagan. Of course, that was the first president I voted for. And proud of that. Very proud of that. I wish I could vote for him again. In fact, I'm not sure they couldn't dig him up and him do better than some of our current ones. But anyway, phenomenal stuff. But looking forward to seeing that movie. There's another one coming out for Faith Watchers, and that's God's Not Dead 4? Is this 4? 3, 4. This is 4. Yeah, God's Not Dead 4. This one is. They told him the other day that it was a movie about. On the Huckabee show, they told Mike Huckabee that it was a movie about him. And he kind of laughed and the reason is because the pastor from the God's Not Dead movies, played by David A.R. White, he actually runs for office in this. So the timing and everything is going to be interesting, and see how that goes. And for those of you who are old enough to remember, Scott Baio is playing the bad guy. And I think this is the first time Scott Baio has ever played a bad guy in anything. He's always been the nice guy, the good guy. So it looks like it's going to be real good. Mike Huckabee is in it. I think they do some kind of interview on his show or something in the movie. So looks like it's going to be good. But there's 2 movies that I know of that I'm looking forward to seeing. A few weeks ago we saw the new Kendrick Brothers movies, and that is very, very good as well. So anybody that wants to take a look at those, we got some great Christian films coming out. We've been yelling for years that we needed more Christian films, right? Well, here they are, so make sure you support them.
Exactly.
All right, so plausibility is all about, does it sound like it could be real? Well, one of the reasons that Kamala Harris is so successful against Donald Trump when it comes to her base, and probably some independents as well, is some of it because of himself, okay? And some of it because of the way he's been portrayed in the media. When people hear that he said something mean, it's easy for them to believe. Because they've heard him say mean stuff before. Exactly. So she can basically say that he said just about anything, and if it's mean, people will believe it, even if it's not true. So that's about plausibility. And so that would be a criticism that I would have of him, that he needs to make himself less vulnerable to that. The second thing that makes a successful lie is consistency. Now, you got to give Kamala points on this one, because she keeps saying the same thing, even if it's not true. She keeps repeating it over and over and over and over again. And as I believe it was Winston Churchill that said, a lie can be halfway across the world before truth gets its pants on. And that's the truth. Okay? And so just telling it over and over again. Another example of this, hope I don't make anybody mad here, but it's the truth, and you can look it up. I'm not lying to you, and I'm not trying to make anybody mad, but during the Michael Brown incident, some of the witnesses said that he came out and he had his hands up saying, "Hands up, don't shoot." And later on in court, they admitted that that was not true, that had not happened. But still to this day, Black Lives Matter will go around, hands up, don't shoot, hands up, don't shoot, hands up, don't shoot. They just keep repeating it, even though it's been proven to be false. Same thing with the Charlottesville thing. Another one that Kamala went after Trump on last night was what they call it, Project 2025. And I don't know how many times Trump has said, I have not read it. I don't know what's in it. But they continually, time and time and time again, keep saying that that's his plan.
Yeah, what's that about? I did see that on a
Project
book.
Project 2025 is about a 900-page book
Okay.
that was put together by the Heritage Foundation. I don't know if you're familiar with the Heritage Foundation, but they are a very conservative think tank. Okay. Ronald Reagan used some of their ideas and policies when he was in, and other presidents have as well. It's like any other think tank. The Democrats have think tanks, the Republicans have think tanks, the conservatives, the liberals, the whatever. By the way, I don't like the term liberal. The progressives is more accurate. But all of them have ideas, and all of them are trying to get an audience with the president to say, hey, here's our ideas, do our ideas. So that's not unusual. But because the progressives feel like Project 2025 is so radical, why? Because a lot of it's filled with Christian ideas, and they hate it. And they've tried to attach that with Trump as being radical, as being far right. The truth of the matter is that's not Trump's agenda. Now, some of the people who have worked for Trump in the past were a part of writing that. But you can say the same thing about Obama and stuff that they do, and Kamala Harris and stuff they do. But they've hooked onto that as a talking point, even though there's no truth in it whatsoever. He personally did not have anything to do with it. He personally does not support Project 2025. And he said last night that he's chosen not to even read it because of the controversy that's out there, and he doesn't want to have a discussion about something that he doesn't even know about. But she'll keep repeating it over and over again, and the campaign keeps repeating it over and over again. And these are the kind of lies that are just very, very, very frustrating. Now, when it comes to Trump's lies, because I need to be balanced here, Trump does his own share of lying. I see a difference in the way they lie, however. Trump is almost always hyperbole. Okay, so if I say that, I got up and sang a new song and everybody loved it. Okay, first of all, there's no way I can know that everybody loved it. Right? I can't do that, because even if I ask, somebody might lie to me. So I don't know that everybody loved it. Second of all, it's probably not true, because some people hate everything.
Exactly.
But when I say that to you, everybody loved it, you're not going to hold me to that. You're not going to go out and start polling everybody in the audience to find out if it's true or not. But they do with Donald Trump. So when he said everybody wanted Roe versus Wade reversed, that was one of the things they hit him for last night. Okay, I don't know of anybody with any common sense whatsoever that believes that that statement is true. And because it's not plausible, it's not a good lie. You see what I'm saying? So if they want to call that a lie, they can call it a lie, but it wasn't a good lie because nobody would believe it. If Donald Trump came out, he visited us tonight, and he told all of you to your face, shaking your hand, saying, I was the best president ever, would you believe that? No. No. Would we hold him to it and say, well, he lied, so therefore he can't be trusted? You see, it's different. We all exaggerate. We all use hyperbole sometimes. How about this one? I could have died. Teenage girls like to use that one. Could they really? Because they were so embarrassed? They almost died? Well, ask the nurse in the audience. I guess it's medically possible, but probably pretty rare, right?
Maybe like the 0.0001.
Okay, 0.001. Well, okay, so maybe there's some truth in it, but very little. Okay.
It would take some major embarrassment.
Major embarrassment, right?
Major.
So you see my point. there's a difference between me saying that, Judah went up and helped Kamala Harris write her campaign policy for her website.
I could even write something that bad if I wanted.
That would be something that people would be like, is that true? Because it matters more than him saying, man, I was driving so fast that the cheetah couldn't keep up with me, or whatever. Right? None of us are going to gauge him on that. But if he tells us that he went and worked for Kamala, we're going to be a little bit more, right? You see what I'm saying? So that's some of the difference, I think. I'm trying to think, does anybody know, has anybody heard Trump do just a flat out lie? Like the 2025 thing?
Not like that. No.
I don't know of one quite like that. They got him last night for the immigrants coming and eating pets. That's been out there. Is there any truth to it? I don't know. We do know it's happening in Venezuela, absolutely. And so whether some of that got conflated, whether it really happened or not, he believed it did. So, I mean, I don't think he was saying it to, because really that whole part of his speech, I told Judah today when we were talking about it, I said, to me, that whole part of his speech, he sounded really wild. And it's like, for those of us who watch the press and we know what's going on, we got what he was saying, but he should have never went down a path where he was talking in sound bites to a group of people who didn't know what he was talking about. It should have been much more, it should have been aimed at an audience that wasn't his base. That stuff will sell with his base. And that's probably part of his problem. Kamala Harris spent a week in seclusion preparing to debate Donald Trump. Donald Trump was out there with his people giving his campaign speeches. See the difference? So she was ready for everything he was throwing at her. I don't think he was aware of what was coming his way with her last night. Uh-huh.
Does Trump have his own person that writes his speeches or whatever, or does he just talk?
He's got some speech writers, but if they do 10% of his content, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I would. I bet he's like.
He's a little bit like
Make America great again.
yeah. He's a little bit like Abraham Lincoln. He writes his own stuff. Actually, but he writes his on the fly. Abraham Lincoln wrote his ahead of time. Donald Trump, I don't know if he hardly writes it. If you go back to the Republican convention, you'll see this. You'll see that first about 20 minutes of his speech, where he was talking about what happened in Pennsylvania, where he was talking about the firefighter who died, where he was talking about all those things, that was pretty scripted. And then all of a sudden it shifts and he's back to his normal talking off the seat of his pants. So and most of the time Donald Trump talks off the seat of his pants.
Yes, he does.
What does Jerry Jenkins call that? Pantsers? Pantsers. Now, a lot of people love him for that. Yeah. And so looking at last night, for example, you see Kamala Harris, who obviously was very scripted. They had told her, you need to say these things. You need to make sure you make these points. You need to give these gestures. You need to give this look. You need to do... It was obvious that she had been very programmed for that event. Donald Trump was going off the fly. So the people that thought of her as fake, they may have liked what Donald Trump did. But the people who felt like Donald Trump rambled, like me, they probably liked a little bit more of Kamala. I think somewhere in between is probably better. Not quite so scripted and more authentic, but maybe not so rambly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. My personal thinking. Okay. Anything else?
I do have one more, but I'm
Go.
going to wait till we clock off.
Okay, okay, that's fine. All right, so let me finish these up. We've got just a couple minutes here. Consistency, so plausibility, is it believable? And I'm actually going to hit on part of this plausibility a little bit in a minute with another point. But consistency, are you being consistent with it? And is the story consistent? So if Kamala Harris said that Donald Trump went to the moon and stole moon rocks on Elon Musk's X rocket. Okay. They probably could have went with him stealing something because they think of him that way, probably. But actually flying to the moon to do it, they probably wouldn't believe that. Now, that's a plausibility as well. But I'll say, is it consistent with is it consistent with reality? Is it consistent with facts? Is it consistent as a story? Because all of you have talked to people, and the more they talk, the more you're like, something's wrong with this story. Right? And so, is it consistent? Is there detail? So if somebody's telling you a story and there's some details that maybe don't contribute directly to their point, but like they say, I went down to Walmart. Their point is that they found a new creamer for their coffee, okay? And so they said, I went down to Walmart and I was looking around trying to find some new creamer because I was getting tired of what I was using. And oh man, I saw this jacket that I just got to get. It's crazy. And so anyway, so I went to get see, that's the kind of detail that people might throw into a story that has nothing to do with what they're saying, except it's a random thought that came in their head. And it's a detail that you say, okay, well, and it's consistent with the story because they're at Walmart. Right. They're not at the pig farm when they saw the jacket, right? So that makes it more believable. If it's a straight line and all they're doing is giving you the facts that are necessary to make their story up, then chances are they're lying. Because there's nothing that strays from the... That's one of the reasons we know the New Testament is real. Because sometimes the authors of the New Testament throw in stuff that's like, what's that all about? Or the fact that their stories aren't the same between the two. They might be telling about the same incident, but one's given one perspective and one's given another perspective. In other words, they didn't get together and say, hey, let's write this. They're both telling real life stories. And the fact that their stories deviate a little bit, some people say that shows that the Bible's not real. No, that shows that it's real. You ask any cop, you get two people in two different rooms and ask them about the thing. If they tell you the exact same story, they've put it together. But if the stories are slightly different, even some of the facts are different from their perspective, then they're probably telling the truth. See the difference? And so detail is important. However, not too much detail, which I'll get to in a minute. So another one's emotional control. And that's where Kamala had trouble last night at first. For the first few minutes, she had no emotional control. She was very shaky. Very, very shaky. I looked at Tara and said, she looks scared to death. And Tara's like, yeah. And so I don't know where that was coming from. Probably a lot of pressure on her. I mean, she spent a whole week preparing. But as the night went on, she got more of that control, and she was more believable in the way she carried herself, even when she was flat out lying, which really concerns me when somebody tells a lie and they're believable. Yeah. And maybe it's possible that that's what she's been told and she actually believes that. It's hard to believe that because there's been too many people debunk it. And she's not doing a very good job of her research if she's only believing stuff that's coming from her party. But anyway, that's another story. Preparation. If you've told the story multiple times, you're going to be more believable. Okay? So a successful lie is getting it prepared. What did I just tell you? She spent an entire week with experts scrutinizing every facial expression, every word, everything to make sure that she had her performance down pat. Okay, how does an actor sell their lie? Because it's a lie, right? Yeah. Maybe one for our enjoyment, but it's still a lie. They're not really who they're pretending to be. How do they do that? Practice, practice, practice. Okay. So preparation. And then confidence, that kind of fits with the emotional stuff as well. Now, audience, this is an important one. And this is where I was saying I'm going to touch on this a little bit differently. Their beliefs, their expectation, and their knowledge. So, again, what does the audience expect from Donald Trump? What does the audience expect from Kamala Harris? Mm-hmm. That's going to affect whether or not what they say is believable. What do they believe? Well, if they believe that Donald Trump is out to kill everybody and become an authoritarian dictator, then anything that fits that line, people are going to say, yep, that must be true. Okay? and vice versa with Kamala. And then, how much does the audience know? Do they know that these things have already been fact checked? Do they know the truth? Have they seen? Did they actually hear the speech that she's talking about? Did they actually do any research on Project 2025? All these things are things that are going to affect. The more knowledgeable you are, the harder it is for people to lie to you. That's why I spend so much time trying to teach you guys stuff to help you think, to give you more information so that when you hear stuff, people can't just pull the wool over your eyes. Okay? I don't want you to be lied to. And then, now this one, I told you before, detail, but now I've got one called simple. Okay? If you put too many details in it, and it's a lie, then a couple of things are going to happen. One is the consistency of the story starts breaking down. And you can't keep up with all the different facts that you're putting together in this lie. That's why when you get a kid that you think they did something and they're saying they didn't do it, you just keep asking them questions. Eventually, they're going to tell you the truth. And that's why politicians don't like getting too many questions sometimes. Because the more complicated your lie is, the harder it is for it to hold together. And so what does that mean to you when you're trying to detect people that are lying to you? Get more information. Ask more questions. Get them to expand on what they're saying. Yeah. And likely, if it's a lie, it'll fall apart when you get enough information. And if it's the truth, then it'll stick together. But too often, we just take things at face value. We either believe it's a lie or we believe it's the truth, and then we just move on. If you don't believe that, go back and do a little bit of meditation and contemplation on COVID. That was a mess.
On what?
On COVID.
Oh, COVID. Oh, yeah.
That was a mess.
Yes, it was.
It was an absolute mess.
Yes.
The medications that actually proved to be helpful, that they were saying no, that they'll kill you. The safety of the vaccine, which is now not only highly unquestionable, but one of the inventors of it is actually against it now. Yeah.
But providers aren't pushing the vaccine. You go to your doctor, they don't say anything about it anymore.
Yeah, because the providers were lied to and they don't want to.
That's what I'm
but the
saying.
government still is.
Oh, well, yeah.
I saw a commercial just the other night saying, well, when are we going to get, Junior's COVID vaccine? So they're even pushing it with kids, even though that's been long proven that most kids do not benefit from it. So it's just amazing. Why is this important? Because one day it's going to be more than a shot that you're going to be tempted with. And just don't even think about the rest of the world right now. Think about the Christians you know and their response to COVID. Some of them were ready to kill each other over it.
They sure were. Yeah.
We had people beating people up in drugstores because somebody didn't have a mask on or wasn't wearing it right.
Exactly.
We had people who wouldn't come to church because they were scared somebody might breathe on them. Yeah. Outside with your car windows rolled up in the parking lot, and they still wouldn't show up.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're going to do when the Antichrist shows up. I understand that I truly believe that COVID was a dress rehearsal for what the Antichrist is going to be like. And hopefully we learn some lessons from it. Because far too many lies. I don't know if you guys, is it Gwen Stefanic, I think's her name. Congresswoman. She absolutely eviscerated Mario Cuomo the other day. I was like, whoa. Because of the 15,000 elderly people that died in the nursing homes because of his policies and procedures.
Yeah, that was at the very beginning of it. That's when it happened, wasn't it? Well, that's when it started. That's when they found, I think, at that nursing home.
And so, well, the first one I think was on the West Coast, but yeah, when it started spreading in New York particularly.
Yeah, right. That's what I mean. Yeah.
And that's where he was. He was in New York. But He was the mayor of New York at the time. No, he was governor, wasn't he? Governor Cuomo. And so she just absolutely talked about taking somebody to task. She said, "You will never be governor again." I mean, when you think about that, you can't help but think a little. And I'm not saying he did it intentionally. I'm not judging any of that. That's not my point. But it is very serious when you've got somebody sitting there, and they are tangibly responsible for 15,000 lives.
Yeah.
And it's like, did you do the right thing? Why did you not do the right thing if you didn't do it? Was it politically motivated? Was it whatever? People make mistakes. I get that. Governments make mistakes. But when it's one thing when a person in power, whether that's government or any other kind of power, it's one thing when they have to make a decision and they make the best decision they can. It's another when they manipulate people to do it. And they do it for political reasons. Those are two very, very different things.
Yep.
And I'm not judging him on that. God will have to be his judge, because I'm not.
Yep.
Although Congress is doing a pretty good job of judging him right now. But those are the kind of things that we ran into at COVID that we're just now finding out about a lot of it. A lot of the stuff we just didn't know. There were concerns all along about the heart problems that the vaccine could do. Could cause, and they pretty much just called everybody who said anything like that nuts and freaks and anti-vaxxers and whatever else, and now we know absolutely it has harmed people. Now, can I say that more people were saved because or not because or whatever? No, I can't, because I don't know those numbers right now. But I do know we were flat out lied to, including by the drug manufacturers who took pieces of their study out in order for their numbers to look better. For example, with pregnant women. They took the women who miscarried out of their study so that it wouldn't show up in the results. After the fact. So, yeah, those are think about how driven people can be when they're willing to kill people in order to make money. That should frighten every single one of us. And then they're willing to kill people in order to for political purposes. Now, a big thing that I had last night, I think I told Judah this today when we were talking, is that they asked Donald Trump. They said, "Do you want Ukraine to win this war?" And he wouldn't answer them, which from an administrative position, I think was the right thing to do. And the reason I think it was the right thing to do is because if he does become president and he's negotiating, he doesn't want to show them where he's going with the negotiations. It would be crazy for him to answer those kind of questions right now. It would hurt him in actually being able to negotiate for peace. But I would have liked him to have turned around and said, well, let's ask Kamala if she wants Israel to win. That question was never asked. So for some reason, they're fine with spending hundreds of millions, billions of dollars from our arsenal while people are dying in Ukraine and Russia, but they're telling our ally in Israel to step down, to stop fighting, and to allow the people who invaded their country on October 7th to just, be able to rest a little while so they can warm up and do it again, which they have pledged to do. They said, we will do it again and again and again. They have never backed off from that. But yet our president keeps wanting to go out there and tell them, you need to stop. You need to have a ceasefire. He may be one of the best people in the world of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. So, you have to keep your lives simple. And I'm saying they have to keep their lives simple. Again, y'all are not supposed to use this stuff,
No.
right? Okay. So let's do a quick one again.
No, I'm kidding.
Just here.
Especially not with your spouse. Yeah. So plausibility, consistency, detail, emotional control, preparation, confidence, your audience, what they're expecting and believe and know, and then simple enough to where it's not getting complicated. These are the things they will use to lie to you. And if they fail to use those things, it's going to be more obvious that they are lying to you. Now, in the case of COVID, there's actually one that's not here that when it comes to those kind of campaigns that we want to think about, and that is pressure. And that was primarily what they did with COVID. Not only did they, let's go down through it with COVID real quick, and then we'll stop. But was it plausible that a vaccine could be created? Well, sure, we've created vaccines for other things, right? So, yeah, vaccine's plausible that you could do that. And we've all watched Star Trek where they solve everything within an hour. So we know that they can create that vaccine just like that, right? Especially if Bones is up there helping them, right? Is it consistent? Well, what did they keep doing? They kept talking about the Spanish flu. They kept talking about the H1N1. They kept talking about all these things that we've been through before. And so not only did that make it more plausible, but it was consistent with the way we've tried to deal with things in the past, at least in some ways. Now, this new style of vaccine, the mRNA, that was different. But for years, we've been hearing about how great CRISPR is and how great we can do with genetic changes and stuff now. And, we're really not reprogramming you to become, something weird. And so it's the thing of science fiction. And let's face it, for the most part, we see genetic stuff as favorable. So that's the audience's predisposition toward modern technology. Maybe not as much today, but go back 4 years. Okay, because most of us are sitting here with a lot less trust than we had 4 years ago. Right? But 4 years ago, oh yeah, the world's inventing all these things, and AI is just around the corner, and we're going to be able to take out all birth defects by the year or whatever with this CRISPR technology and this DNA technology, right? And so it was consistent with our knowledge, consistent with our expectations, consistent with all that. They gave us enough detail to make us feel more comfortable with the decisions.
Like Fauci, CDC.
Fauci, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Really just talking about it, make you feel good. Oh, yeah,
That's right. And that built the plausibility because it's a medical doctor, right?
Exactly.
And then they had a whole team of regular physicians, like our physicians.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Sorry about that, Mike. I just slapped my mic, didn't I? Didn't even realize it was there. Forgot it was there. And so, and they were going with the best knowledge that they had, that they were getting from the government agencies and stuff like that. Did they make mistakes? Yeah, they did. And some of them were smart. Some of them picked up on it early. Matter of fact, Dr. Watts picked up on some things very early. He said, there's no reason in the world why you're not treating this like other infections and making sure you take care of those lungs first. And he was one of the few doctors that, remember, a lot of them wouldn't even prescribe anything because that's what they were being told. Mm-hmm. Oh, go home and wait until it's over.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully you won't be dead when it's over, right? And the people we find out now who did do the ivermectin or who did some kind of Z-Pack or something like that, they were far more likely to get past COVID and do it quickly, at least from the numbers that I've seen. So thank God there were some doctors who were like, wait a minute, why are we changing everything we've been doing for the past 50 years? And I thank God for those. I thank God I've got a doctor who did that.
Yes.
Now, was he right on everything? No, he wasn't, because he was going with the information he had. Okay, and was I right on everything? No, because I was going with the information I had. If I knew the things I knew today, I would have done some things differently. But see, there's where we're going back to. I had a responsibility to the church to do the absolute best I could do.
What you knew about.
With what I knew.
The information you had.
And God is my witness, and I hope all of you agree that's what I did.
Yep.
I didn't believe in shutting down the church, but at the same time, I didn't believe in being reckless. Yep. So we wore our masks, and we did our distancing, and we still preached the word, and we still got together.
Exactly.
And I don't regret any of that. Now, there were some churches in the area, and I'm not picking on them, but, they they had a big choir, and they stuffed everybody in the choir box, and before you know it, the whole church is infected.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't wise, you know. So we happened to make a good decision, I think, there. Could it have been wrong? Yeah, it could have. And we had people calling on the phone, cussing us out because we were having church. You know, or I don't know if they cussed us out, but they were angry. Anyway, that we were. I have to ask Michelle; she got the call, but and people on Facebook, you know, and all that stuff. So there was a lot of stuff going on. But anyway, so they had enough detail. When Dr. Fauci got up there, he had the personal emotional control, and this is what we've got to do, and this is the way we're going to get through this, and blah, 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 blah. And the fact that he was making millions of dollars while the rest of us were suffering, we weren't really thinking about that too much at the time. They were very prepared. They had all their ducks in a row. They were coordinating the different agencies and the different medical people together in order to give the same message to everybody.
Yep.
They were very confident in what they were saying. I believe most of the people really believed what they were saying. But I do believe there were some people, including Fauci. Why do I believe that? Because of some of the emails that have come out and because of his lies to Congress. He said that they were not involved in gain of research in Wuhan. And now we know they absolutely were involved in gain of research, gain of function research, in Wuhan. So now that was an interesting one last night. I know we got to go, but that was another interesting one last night, was where when Trump was president, they were criticizing him because he was calling it the Wuhan flu or the Chinese flu. Remember that? And calling him a xenophobe and all this stuff because they said he was basically being mean to China. And then last night she was accusing him of cozying up to China and helping China during COVID. So it's like, well, which is it?
Yeah.
Was he a xenophobe who hated China, or was he buddy-buddy with Xi? And because those two things are not consistent. But that's what happens 4 years later. Now it's being sold as something different than what it was. Just depends on what the thing is. So that would be one of those things where consistency died last night on that one.
Yeah.
If we're watching, if we're paying attention. Confidence, obviously. Audience, again, our expectations. We want to trust our doctors. We want to trust our professionals. We want to trust the people that we put into power. And that puts us at a disadvantage when they choose to lie to us. And then last night, the last thing is it was simple. They didn't get too complicated with it. They weren't trying to explain to us everything that happens with an mRNA vaccine. They were giving us some of the highlights, some of the big picture things, and this is what it's going to do. And now we know that some of the things it did actually were damaging. But we didn't have that. And think of what this did for the medical companies. How many years ahead in their mRNA research did this do for them? Because they had one massive test group. Can I say it another way, just to be a little bit sarcastic? I'm trying to come up with another word for that sounds more spiritual. They had one huge group of guinea pigs or lab rats.
Yes, that's right.
Because they know far more about mRNA vaccines and mRNA interactions than they did prior to COVID. And we got to pay for it. We got to pay for their research that the FDA did not have to approve. And that Congress passed a law that we couldn't sue them if they hurt us. What a deal for the pharmaceutical companies. Well, the ones that were in favor. Because, some of the pharmaceutical companies got crushed under all this. Like Johnson & Johnson, who refused to follow the state ideas of what the best way to handle this was. They got absolutely pulverized by both government and the press, media. But Pfizer and Moderna, hope you had some stock. All right. Anything else before we go offline and she can ask her question? Sorry, guys. She just doesn't want y'all to know what her question is. Or her statement, whichever it is. All right, a little bit different tonight. We'll get into some more scriptures. Next week is the plan. I plan to do that tonight, but I really wanted to take a chance. When you're right in the middle of something happening, or when you just came out of something, it can be good to just look at it and say, okay, how does this apply to this? And so I hope you see that. And I hope that as you hear things coming out of the media or coming out of politicians or coming out of anybody, that you'll at least think about these things and go, is this really, don't just accept everything on its cover value. We can't anymore. We can't anymore. How many of you know new and improved is not new and improved?
No.
It might be new, but it's questionable as to whether it improved. And marketing's been selling us that for years. At some point, we'll talk about Edward Bernays and his book Propaganda, which launched the modern marketing movement and actually helped Hitler do his thing. Because it's all about lies and convincing people of things that they weren't convinced of before. And then Jude will come up and do a little skit on how car salesmen do it.
Lie to you all.
Yeah, we all be doing that.
All right. Thank y'all for being with us tonight. Who wants to close us in prayer?
I'll do what I can.
Okay.
Lord, we thank you for tonight again and our study, and we're just thankful that our eyes have been opened to things tonight, and God, we just praise you and give you the glory, Lord, for just being with us and helping us understand things, and we just give you all the glory. Be with us as we go home, and bring us back together again Sunday together. Amen.
Amen. Let me tag it one thing, and that is that the one thing we mentioned it earlier, but I wanted to make sure I fit it in with these things we just went over for COVID, and that is the peer pressure. Because again, just think about how much pressure was on us to follow the government line.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Pressure from social media, pressure from news agencies, pressure from our schools, pressure from our doctors, pressure from just about everywhere around us. Everybody was telling us what we needed to do, and if we didn't do that, then somehow we didn't fit in society correctly.
And another thing, Pastor, is they showed everything on the news of all the deaths.
Right.
We were aware of 20,000 deaths at
That's
this
true.
one place, so we were scared.
Right.
Hey, I got to, yes, I know I got to get that,
Right.
So they kind of scared us about that. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure what ever filed there, but
Yeah, absolutely. And they did, again, got to stop, and they also set up an incentive system. We'll have to talk about that sometimes, the incentive system, the incentive to lie that is created a lot of times in these situations. But just to hit on it real briefly, within the medical community, they got more money if it was a COVID death. And that incentivized people to lie on the death certificates, to lie on the sheets, even if they just thought it might have had something to do with COVID. And so incentives can do that too, and definitely with politicians and with others, there are great incentives. There's a lot of money to be made in politics. There's a lot of money to be made in other areas if you're willing to compromise your moral values. And there's a lot of money to be made in churches if you're willing to compromise God's truth.
exactly.
All right, we ain't gonna do that, are we?
No.
We're just gonna watch out for them. We're not using this for our own personal gain. Everybody uphold your right hand, put your left hand on your Bible. I'm just kidding. All right, thank y'all. Good to see you tonight.